Okay folks, it's been a real long ass time since I've done one of these. In fact, probably the last one I did was for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom back in June. So yeah, we're talking ancient times in YouTube terms, but we're here to watch the cinematic debut of Venom in his Soul movie. Now with Tom Hardy as the titular character, this is going to be an interesting concept considering the last time he played a superhero was as, well, any super character was Bane back in The Dark Knight Rises back in 2012, and we all have a few things to say about Bane considering that wasn't comic book accurate. Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, and the fact that we've seen from the trailers he's actually referring to himself as Venom, which in Spider-Man 3 he never referred to himself as Venom once, nor was there the duality. But then that said, Topher Grace was such a poorly miscast choice as Eddie Brock. If anything, you would have been better off with Hank Azaria, or dare I even say it, Brock Lesnar. Granted, the guy can't cut a promo for anything, but the guy has the physique and he would have sold it like a boss. Shame he doesn't show up so much. You're all thinking it. So, what can Sony do considering they're hemorrhaging more money these days than people would care to note about? But from what the vibe is going about, this is a similar situation to Scary Movie back in 2000. Critics hate it, audiences loved it. You be the judge. And until for the next 2 hours, I'll give you my exact opinion about Venom. Okay, if you've clicked on this thinking that this is the spoiler-free review, and considering how long I've been doing this, I would have thought some people would be wise to this by now, but just for those that don't understand the formula, when it says in the description, this is the spoiler review, and even in the title it says spoiler review, I'm going to give you 5 seconds just to click off, just so that you're not going to have this spoiled if you haven't seen this movie yet. Okay then, where to start? Writing, it feels pretty much like a reasonably okay, good, dumb action movie, but with the way that it was shot, scored, and with the way the actors turned the performance in, you're not going to complain too much about it. I mean, Tom Hardy nailed this. He does the duality to a T, as far as Brock and Venom is concerned. It's almost like a nagging husband and wife kind of scenario. You'll have sensible wife, sensible husband here, and have nagging wife, nagging husband here, and they're just constantly bickering at each other. So there is that kind of dynamic where they're arguing with each other, where it'd be like, you can only eat people if they're bad. There are plenty of good people, but if there are bad people that want to do harm, you can have them. It's like, oh, okay. Like at the end of the movie where he's seen the guy holding the cashier lady up for money and for racketeering, which I'm amazed is still going on in this day and age, but this is the world we live in. And you just hear Venom's always go, bad guy, bad guy. It's like, okay. Now, I had my own kind of preconceptions going into this, because given Sony's track record of movies lately, but I went into this with an open mind, and it's pretty much being more or less faithful, because they touched upon Brock getting ran out of New York from the Daily Globe for being Eddie Brock, and they touched upon where he basically printed a story where it was fake, where he tried to put a story out that Carlton Drake didn't want to answer to people that were spreading false accusations, which brings in fake news. And he loses his job, his apartment, his fiancée. They cover that in this, and it's a very quick descent from being a phenomenally credible and entertaining reporter with the Eddie Brock report to struggling to find work, getting ousted from his apartment, which apparently was, of the 40 minutes that got cut from the movie, that Tom was actually quite favourable of those 40 minutes, just seeing what would happen. And it's just as basically, this is a guy who's down on his luck, but it was self-inflicted. He chose to be Eddie, and being Eddie cost him. It turned him... When I say a loser, I don't mean that in a derogatory or spiteful thing. He lost. He lost big time. The biggest problem, although it's an okay movie, it's reasonable, it's enjoyable, there's one big glaring omission that would have made this movie perfect. And that is Spider-Man. You cannot tell the origin of Venom without Spidey. Because Venom came to be because of the fact that Parker ousted the symbiote from his body and then found a host in Eddie Brock. And, the two were like a custom-made hand glove. They fit perfect. They got little bits and pieces. They had elements, particularly from the 90s animated series, where Venom is susceptible to supersonic frequency. He's susceptible to fire. And what they don't tell you, and this is what they didn't tell you in the animated series or any of the other iterations that Venom has made a moving media appearance, is that if Spidey had not gotten rid of the symbiote, it would have eaten him alive from the inside out, because the symbiote feeds off of hosts. So that was in the movie, but that's just what they didn't put in the cartoon series or the other movies. I mean, with the cartoon series, I kind of get it, because there's a certain threshold that you can't go past, or a certain boundary that you have to remain behind, because Wise Man once said, know your boundaries and respect them. So I would understand that with a TV series, particularly set at a young demographic. I get that. But with the movies, they could have included that. Just saying. And I think what I enjoyed about this is Venom was better represented as an anti-hero than he was being shoehorned in at the end of Spider-Man 3 11 years ago, and that movie can go straight to heck in a handbasket, because Spider-Man 3 was awful. The Spider-Man 3, in my opinion, is the Jurassic Park 3, the Batman and Robin, the Iron Man 3, and the Superman 3 and 4 of the Spider-Man franchise. That was awful. Also, the whole Spider Swagger thing. Ugh. Maguire, you could have said no. Just saying. I like the cinematography as well, especially the action sequences. Well organized, well choreographed, especially with the whole turbo boost set. This is the Knight Rider fan in me coming out here. The whole turbo boost segment going down certain streets, which may have been an unintentional nod to Bullet. It may have been, I don't know. But that was well done. The thing I'm gonna not narc the movie down a couple of points. Too much lens flare. I appreciate a lot of people like these visual effects movies to be impressive, but guys, lens flares are getting obnoxious. I mean, J.J. Abrams is especially guilty of this with his Star Trek movies. I noticed they did this in Jurassic World when the ACU unit was going after the Indominus Rex. Can we tone it down, guys? Just say it. And yeah, just tone down the lens flare, or as the AVGN want, or is it AVGN or Razorfist? Comment section below. Lens flare everywhere! If it was you, Razorfist, you're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Score. The score did what it needed to for an action superhero movie of this genre. It kept it intense, it kept the adrenaline going, and slowed things down for these slightly tender moments and what have you. So it did its job in that regard. Visual effects, I think they were satisfying. It wasn't necessarily anything to the effects of like I said in the spoiler free, there's nothing like the first Jurassic Park movie or Iron Man 3, which is probably the most polished of the Iron Man movies when it comes to visual effects. Although I would argue, also Jurassic World was quite well polished. But it looked convincing enough, it looked amusing, and yeah, I can't really say anything more than that. Although, I'm just going to say this. Although Tom Hardy does a good Venom voice, it would have been so much more amazing and so much more like, oh, if they had gotten Tyrone Magnus to do that. Because anybody that's ever seen Tyrone Magnus's recut of the Venom trailer, he dubbed in his voice over Venom's, and it's something to behold because, again, Tom Hardy's was good. I'm not going to take anything away from the man, but Tyrone, perfect. That's all I'm going to say. How you doing, by the way? I don't think I really say too much more. Again, people feel like this movie was something of a throwback to something that should have come out 10 years ago, but considering a lot of Marvel movies and a lot of superhero movies now are kind of doing the status quo, just doing rinse and repeat rather than try something new just to freshen the things up. I mean, give you an example of that. You think how superhero movies were in the early 2000s? Batman Begins comes along, changes the whole landscape because, in my honest opinion, Batman Begins is the best movie out of the Dark Knight trilogy. Now, do I base that on fact? No. I base that on my opinion, because I will happily and humbly admit The Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight were very, very successful movies financially and ratings-wise. But I feel like Batman Begins told the story whereby it didn't overpad things and it didn't rush things. It told it at the pace it needed to. And Nolan worked with the budget he had to work with. And again, like I say, Batman Begins was a game changer. Again, I like The Dark Knight, but I feel like The Dark Knight is, in my opinion, and my opinion only, a little preachy. There are some people that only rate it highly because of Heath Ledger's Joker. First and foremost, Heath Ledger was a great Joker, but I think it would have been better if that version of the Joker was called Anarchy. Because to me, there are two actors, animated and live action, that are the quintessential Jokers. Number one being Jack Nicholson, because I come from that generation where comic book movies were being treated more seriously, but at the same time it didn't take itself too seriously, and Jack nailed it. And also, he told jokes, which is the thing I kind of got annoyed with Heath Ledger's Joker, is that he didn't tell any jokes. And the most quintessential Joker, Mark Hamill. What more is there to say? I mean, it's in the same regard that most people consider Kevin Conroy the most quintessential figure for Batman, whether it's live action or animated, because Conroy knows how to go to these places. Not to take anything away from what Keaton, Affleck, and Bale have done. I like Val Kilmer, George Clooney, good Bruce Wayne, not so much Bats. And there are some people that think that Kilmer was a worse Batman than Clooney. I respectfully disagree. Just saying. And Tom Hardy is easily the best live-action version we've had from Venom, because Topher Grace, you're terrible. Because not only does the Topher Grace version just come off as one of those annoying show-offs, like in high school where they think they're better than everybody and what have you. At least with Tom Hardy's version, this is a version of Brock that prides himself on journalistic integrity. He'd rather get the facts and the truth out there rather than just do something just to impress people. I mean, yeah, there is an argument that you could argue that he does what he does as a reporter to impress people, but he's also doing it to get the money and tell the story, i.e. the truth. But Topher Grace was not only miscast as Eddie Brock, not Edward Brock Jr., but also as Venom, because best to my understanding, he never even referred to himself as Venom once. And there was no duality with Brock and the black symbiote costume. At least with this, Brock and Venom having the duality, that's perfect. They nailed that down to a fine art, and I was glad to see that in the movie. And like I said, it's nice to sort of see Venom portrayed in a way whereby he's not being full-on venomous, no pun intended, as a bad guy, but at the same time, he's not trying to be a preachy, white meat, baby face, good guy, eat your vitamins, say your prayers type of shtick. He's basically just an anti-hero. So think Spike from Buffy, think Batman, think Wolverine, or think Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk. That sort of... They are the good guys, but they do things that are questionable, but the payoff is more or less the same. But other than that, I can recommend this movie if it's on a matinee price, or if there's nothing else on and you want something different from the MCU, because people want choice. You know, there are some times where you just want to break out of your comfort zone and try something new. Just to throw in an example, and this is not the best analogy, but you'll get the context of this. Mick Foley said in Triple H's The Game DVD from 2002, Triple H could have done the easiest thing when he turned heel, say all the same catchphrases, but what he then did, he did a complete 180, he went the opposite direction, he lost all his catchphrases, and he stepped out of his comfort zone and he tried new things. And that's the biggest problem. In TV, Hollywood, video games, and comics, everybody's copying a formula or one another. So, I mean, although the MGU Spider-Man game has been receiving a lot of praise, a lot of people have compared it to Batman Arkham Asylum style of gameplay, and they're like, ugh. And again, I appreciate that Batman can influence a lot of writers, developers, directors, and what have you, but just see it as an influence. Don't straight up copy it, because Random DCE said something to the effect of once, find your own voice. If you find something is not working for you, just step out of your comfort zone. Just try and do something else. I mean, you know, AVGN wanted to try something new, but when he tried, you know, taking a lot of the profanity out of his videos, apparently the fans rebelled and said, no, do the same stuff again. And here's the thing. Whilst, like I say, always respect your audience, also respect the content creator enough when they want to do something different, or if they've lost the passion to, you know, what they're doing. This is why I don't do wrestling reviews anymore. This is why I don't do RDR, because I lost the passion for wrestling. You want further evidence? Just watch the last few weeks of Monday Night Raw. Apparently it has gone from abysmal to below zero. And, you know, there's not really much more I can say with regards to that, because, yeah. And it's the same thing why I gave up on TV full-time some 9 years ago. I mean, They brought me back in with Terminator the Sarah Connor Chronicles, that deserved a third season, admit it. But also, when they cancelled Knight Rider SG, that's like, that's it. That's it, you know, that is the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, that was the final straw. I'm out, I'm done. And the only time I tune in for TV now is if it's a new episode of Sherlock, Thunderbirds or Go, or heck, if Gotham improves, because I've been hearing from friends and what have you, it's been kind of so-so in the last few seasons. Their words, not mine. But it's what I say to people all the time. You know, people that say, "Oh, I didn't like what this was on TV." It's like, yet you keep watching it each week. That kind of says something. You don't like something anymore? Stop watching a TV show. Stop going to that movie. Stop buying that game. Stop buying that newspaper. Stop buying that magazine. You don't give them what they want, which is your money and your statistics and your viewer time. They soon start changing tactics. It's like Razor Fist once said with regards to, I forget the video in question, but he mentioned something to the effect of where one particular form of media was telling their fans what they couldn't do. It's like, you tell me what to do, my wallet closes and I leave with it. You hurt them where it hurts, you hit them where it hurts, folks, and they soon start changing things. So, yeah. Long tangent, long story short, it's a satisfiable movie. That's all I can say.